Hello, everybody, and welcome back to that Milan podcast. Martino Puccio, Matt Santangelo, alongside you guys after another victory for Milan. Haven't lost in 5 straight matches, I believe, in all competitions. We'll get into some of that. But again, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Follow us on Apple and Spotify or wherever you listen to your audio podcasts. It would be greatly appreciated. Give us a review on there, 5 stars. Leave a comment on what you like about the podcast. And again, just leave us a comment on what you think Milan have been like in recent matches and all that kind of stuff. So we're just going to hop right into it, Matt. Yesterday's match against Slovan Bratislava saw a 3-2 victory for Milan. Good result, awful performance is really all I have to say. There isn't going to be too much to kind of discuss regarding yesterday. We saw the starting 11 put out there. Really perplexing when it comes to defense, man. Can you explain to me as to why there's so much rotation? I understand there's matches and this and that, but when do we start to get to the point that we reward consistency? Because when you have this much of erratic changes at the back, and honestly, I don't even think there's like a solid combo that you could go with this team. Like, what is your thought process every single time you see the back line? Calabria started with this one instead of Royale. It's insane to me how they're both like just awful. Like the things that Emerson does well, which I don't even really know off the top of my head, and then same with Davide Calabria. I really am speechless. I was texting you before we started this podcast. Like I don't have much to say. I still don't have much to say because I'm just going to be repeating myself from past podcasts. I can't stand watching this back line because I actually do enjoy watching the attacking play and these players. But I want to talk about the back line first, and then we can go to some of the positives. Dude, I don't see how any of this changes at all. What are your thoughts yet again? I mean, just every single time there's a transition, you're like, oh my God, they have a great opportunity to score. Pavlovic had a goal line saving tackle, but you could also argue that was his fault for the player rounding the keeper. Really the full Pavlovic experience there. So yeah, go ahead. Your thoughts on the defense to start with this.
It's the same old story with this club. I mean, I think, we've discussed how impressive the attack has looked and how dynamic it can look at times. And in this game, you didn't have Morata. You had Tammy Abraham starting from the beginning, and you had Rafael, you had Okafor, you had Pulisic, you had Chukwueze, and yet the attack still looked pretty fluid as far as like the performance goes. I think that if you want to kind of dive into Noah Okafor getting the start over Rafael Leao, I get rotation to a sense.
But okay, so real quick before you go with that, why was he sat? Did we know? Was it because of the knock?
I don't know.
I think it was very cryptic again.
I don't know if it's Paulo Fonseca saw the opponent and was like, maybe this is the time for me to get an idea of where Noah Okafor is at and how much I can rely on him. But I think that it's pretty obvious what we've seen from Noah Okafor. I think he actually just made his 50th appearance.
Yeah, which I was like stunned by. They got to be like 45 of them substitutes, but
yeah, he's predominantly a super sub. I mean, I think that in most of the performances that he has fared well and has provided a goal or an assist, it's come from the bench. And I think there really isn't more that I need to see from Noah Okafor in a starting role. I mean, I'm not saying that we should completely treat him as an outcast when discussing the starting 11 in certain fixtures, right? But I think in a match like this, like Rafa's got momentum. He's playing well. I know even in the Juventus game, he was okay. I didn't think he was spectacular, but I think he's been trending of late in the right direction. So why wouldn't you play him in a game like this? Maybe he can score from the beginning. He can kill this game off, and then you bring in Noah Okafor. Maybe this is the game where Rafa gets a goal or 2 goals and an assist, and he explodes. And it's like, okay, that's that big Champions League, performance that he's needed. Now, he did win man of the match in this one. He had a great goal in the second half, a good ball from Fofana. But I think it's kind of strange the way that Fonseca goes about doing things, because I think that, when you look at a match like this, where we just came off an international break, in the Juventus game, we didn't risk much as far as our players, and there wasn't any knocks, any players that were banged up. Why wouldn't you play Rafa? Why wouldn't you play Rafa, Pulisic, Scores? I just don't understand what Fonseca is doing. In the midfield was fine. It's Tijani Reinders, Fofana, but it's the same old story with this team. Defensively, as you mentioned, right? Pavlovic looks like a train wreck back there. I mean, a great recovery, if you want to say something about it.
But he had the highest rating on FotMob of any defender, though, man.
But exactly. And then you see, the one goal that the first goal, the response goal that they scored minutes after the Pulisic goal, completely caught too high. And you're looking at this and thinking like, this team will never be sufficient enough defensively to have a clean game in a Champions League match. Because let's face it, right? The argument that Paulo Fonseca used for how good we played versus Real Madrid versus some of the teams in Serie A was, well, those teams in Italy, they like to sit deep and they like to do this, like to do that. What's the reasoning for Bratislava? No disrespect to them, but they're a team that in this match, when they're down, they have to go forward. Why are we risking so much playing high?
So do you
and
want
then all of a sudden it's Tijani Reinders in retreat mode? You would have think we were down a guy based on how we were defending that goal. So I don't quite understand. And then obviously they get a second goal in the second half after Milan were up 3-1.
It was an incredible goal.
Incredible goal, great strike. But again, like, this is a team that you can count on one hand, definitely, the amount of good to great performances they've had this year. And we're approaching December. That's a huge concern.
The problem.
The Real Madrid and Inter aside, can you point to any singular Serie A performances that Milan have been like spotless, clean?
I mean, Venezia was great.
Venezia game, okay.
But again, to me, I don't think about that. I don't care about that. That's like their relegation fodder sides. Like, you should be like dominating them. That's why like the Cagliari performances are aggravating. But really quick, a couple of statistics with Slovan Bratislava. They're 35th out of the 36 teams in the Champions League.
Like, come on.
They have scored 4 goals in the Champions League this year, and that's after the Milan match. Milan conceded 2 against them. They scored half their goals in the Champions League against AC Milan. Like, do we realize how bad that was? And they could have scored more. The Pavlovic goal line save was something to not even to behold of that, because I was so annoyed by it. It really reminded me of the Club Brugge match, where they're constantly getting exposed. They're not actually preventing them and controlling the match. You mentioned how it looked like when Milan were conceding on the first goal there against Slovan. Everybody was like quote tweeting and talking about Milan because they were the earlier match in the Champions League. So there were a lot of eyeballs on them. The Atletico match was 6-0. No one really had eyeballs on it. So everyone was saying there, why does it look like Milan are trying to go for a last minute goal to win instead of actually playing the game like they're up 1-0? Like, we love to make fun of Allegri and poke fun of like what Juve used to do when they're up 1-0. They form this turtle shell where they're not allowing anything. I yearn for that kind of stuff. Because why are we exposing ourselves like this when it's not necessary? It really isn't to be playing that high of a line.
Especially
Tijani Reinders is the last guy running behind, regardless if he was playing it well or not. I don't know if you thought this too. He almost tripped up the player, so it almost reminded you of his red card against Udinese, where he was sort of backing off a little bit, and I totally understand where he was coming from with that. But how are you putting yourselves into a position so often? It's really just mind-boggling. And then we look at the XG stuff. They had 1.5 XG, 6 total shots, 3 on target for Slovan, and they really had their opportunities here. It wasn't like they appeared out of thin air. Like that one goal that was phenomenal for the second one. It's just Milan allowing themselves to be exposed like this time and time again. There's no continuity at the back line in terms of players starting on a consistent basis or center back pairings, where you're just constantly exposing them. Ahmed Badir also had a statistic on how Reinders and Fofana were barely winning duels. And I think he makes a good point in like, okay, regardless if that's your type of style for Reinders and Fofana, that they're not those types of defensive midfielders, those true sixes, as we've mentioned, you still have to do the job. Someone has to do that. Someone has to win those duels. Someone has to do the defensive dirty work. There's still 0 players doing that. And it's sort of like mind-boggling to me that we keep going to the same thing time time and time again, expecting these players to do something differently when they're not going to change. This is who they are.
So Martino, so how
Yeah,
many
go for it.
times did we had Frank Kessie, right? When we had Sandro
Right.
Tonali, how many times did we highlight their ability to be like that sort of armor to the back line? Because we weren't really ever this defensively stout team that was known for having this sort of pedigree as being truly elite in this area, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we had players that had that sort of profile in a way, or had characteristics that would lean towards being like a defensive midfielder. And I'd argue, yes, that's obviously contributing to why maybe we're not as good defensively as we need to be.
Sure.
But the truth of the matter is this: when you have us playing as high as we do and taking those risks, as Ali pointed out, he tweeted it out a couple hours ago, and I tend to always side with him as far as his view of each performance, right? And he said, it seems like Paulo Fonseca is a manager that's completely willing to express and show his limitations in favor of a style of football that we don't even necessarily play. And if we play it, it's not to a very high level, right? Like, you can tolerate a team like Atalanta, if you're an Atalanta fan or someone who watches Calcio and you're enjoying good football, you can tolerate a team like Atalanta who sticks to their strength and they know their identity. They're an attacking team, right? So if they risk goals, fine. But Milan aren't in this position where they, again, are this high-powered offensive side. They have very good quality. They have very good players, but they're not a team that's putting up 5-6 goals. Fiorentina is putting up more goals than we are. And
defending
I
much
just
better.
look at the way we approach certain matches and we approach certain opponents, and it really makes me scratch my head, because this is the type of opponent that you'd think that Milan, once they got that goal, they would say, hey, let's hunker down. Let's kind of take the air out of the ball a little bit. All of a sudden, they're playing too high. They get caught out, and it's a nice finish, but it's a goal that it kind of makes you scratch your head. You're like, where's our defense? Because Tijani was the last guy there, and you think we were down a guy. Where's our anchoring midfielders? Where's our stay-at-home defender to not risk that? Because all it takes is a 1v1, you have your defender. So we always seem to be in a scrambling position on the counter. We're incredibly exposed when we get countered on. And against better teams in the Champions League, as we've seen, Liverpool, Bayer Leverkusen, maybe not so much in that Real Madrid game, but teams like that are going to absolutely tap dance around you. They're going to tap dance around you. They're going to make it so extremely easy. And all credit to Bratislava, because they scored 2 goals against a team like Milan, and you look at the names they have, you're not really like...
Shout out Kuchka.
Kuchka, yeah. But like, I don't know. I said it before and I'll say it again. I don't see any semblance of improvement. I don't see any semblance of a direction with this defense that gives me confidence that we're going to figure it out and something's going to click. I don't see it. It's so week to week in that area of the team. And I'd argue that for what we do so well up front, it gets completely overruled and mitigated in the back, because Pulisic was very good. Rafa was very good.
Which we'll get to,
And Tammy, I thought, was pretty good as well.
I thought Tammy was great.
The defense and the issues back there seem to mask and disguise some of the other really good quality performances that we put forth in some of these games.
Yeah, those are all the negatives. The same per usual. We're pretty much a broken record there. A broken record in a good way is Christian Pulisic. The running behind here was sensational. The finish was good. I mean, Tammy just a really good job with the assist here. I thought Tammy, in my opinion, I know they gave it to Rafa, but Tammy had a hand in every single goal. I'll go through it in a second. But first, to give more flowers to Christian, playing the number 10 again. He's just a Swiss Army knife on steroids is the way I describe Pulisic in attack. It's just every single time that, and he stated this in interviews where he's like, yeah, it's not always going to go well that you get a goal or an assist, but it genuinely feels like almost every single time he plays significant minutes, it's a goal and an assist. I even thought when he came on against Juventus, Milan's attack looked completely different. They had more chances. Obviously, Juve are really difficult to break down. But again, just the goal itself was sensational. there's nothing left to say. He's making an impact in every single game, and his reputation in general is only going to precede itself. But the way he's building up this sort of, I don't know, it's not so much a reputation at Milan, just like his stature at the club now is only increasing. Like, it's so great to have another great player that you could rely upon. It always felt like there was only Leao, individual brilliance, and Teo Hernandez that you could rely upon in terms of goal scoring output. What Pulisic is doing on a week-to-week basis for Milan right now has to be lauded at. It just, you really, really can't say anything else about how great he has been for this club. And again, it shows. He is ultimately the difference. You could look at like the other two players who did score and contribute here, but Pulisic, it just feels like time and time again, man, he is that guy to start things off. I believe Inter, Liverpool, this match, he always seems to get these runs that he makes, and the finishes are cool. They're all very three similar goals in the way he finished, running in behind the defense and being the last man there, because he scored some great technical goals at his time in Milan so far. But again, Pulisic, Matt, this guy is the most reliable attacker consistently since he's arrived. I would say Leao's ceiling obviously so much higher. He's right there with Pulisic in terms of output, but Pulisic right now, he's just a well-oiled machine, man.
He is. I'm just gonna reel off some numbers here. So in Serie A, he's got 5 goals and 3 assists in 12 matches, 10 of which he started, 859 minutes. In the Champions League, he's played in 5 matches, started all 5, 3 goals, 1 assist. Now, obviously, he had the goal against Liverpool. He had the goal and assist, I believe, against Club Brugge. I think that he had a goal.
He had a goal. Yeah, I don't think he had an assist against Brugge, but he did have the goal against, or the assist against Real Madrid. Or no, the goal against Real Madrid. I keep forgetting. He's just done so much. I'll have to pull it up for him. But keep going.
Yeah, he had a goal against Club Brugge. He had an assist against Real Madrid.
Yeah.
So, what I want to basically highlight about him is that, well, for one, on that individual goal, he seems to do that quite a bit. The way he's able to link up quickly and make that central run, there was a very similar goal he scored versus Liverpool too.
Far as getting exactly. Behind. That's what I was saying. The same thing with Inter as well.
Just like he's got a really good understanding of the pitch and when to make those runs, when to stay back and support, when to drop deep, when to go push forward, get involved. I mean, this is a player that, by all accounts, can play 3 of the most crucial positions in the attack at a very high level. And this was a player that we were talking about when he joined Milan, where there were concerns about whether he can play right wing. Well, he's already showed he can play right wing. He can do it at a really great level. He's shown time and time again that when he does get that freedom to play as a number 10, he can do that, be a creative player, but also score goals. And obviously left wing, which is deemed his natural position, he's very rarely played there, only if Rafa's not playing. But it just goes to show you that this is a player that is good with both feet, can play in multiple areas across the pitch. I mean, I'd even trust him if we were in a big issue up front. I would trust him as a false 9, a striker, because I think that truthfully, he's got a really good eye for goal. He knows when to drop deep. He's got good technical ability and good, again, reading of the game. So when you see that he had the seasons he had last year, then come into this year and, he can't do it in the big game and do Liverpool. He does Inter. He's doing it in the Champions League. At some point, the whole people who's he scoring goals against,
it's literally the only validation needed is
a moot and irrelevant point, because he's doing it basically what it feels like every week is getting at least a goal or an assist. And I think at this point in time, for how strong Rafa I think is coming on, I think it's pretty obvious that Pulisic has been Milan's most important player this year.
Yeah, definitely. And that's like the funny thing with Pulisic is that we'll go to some of his numbers more so, right? So again, 8 goals, 4 assists in all competition through 17 matches so far this season. For reference, with Chelsea, that's his second best season at Chelsea in all competitions. His first season was his best, 11 goals, 7 assists in 34 matches. The next best season was 8 goals, 4 assists in 21-2022. The only thing that this player is missing, and I'm going to be going on Tactical Manager's channel in a week or so to discuss this. well, I'll wait for the topic of conversation to come out, but basically, to further his quote unquote legacy at the club, we need a trophy for him in the worst way. In the worst way. I don't care how we get it. I will celebrate a Super Copa trophy so hard if that were to come across. I just you know it.
Yeah.
When players win a trophy, and this is for anybody, it just further cements that legacy. And I know you need a lot of more trophies at Milan to kind of further yourself up that totem pole of like all-time greats. But just as far as individuals go, it's incredible. It's just great. And I think George Wolf, who's still recovering from some heart issues, asked me on Twitter, do you think Liverpool comes calling? Why go to Liverpool? Why change up anything if this is like where
Now
you're at right now?
he's extremely comfortable at Milan. He said it before.
There's no reason
Yeah.
to change it up
No.
unless like it's like, we're like 4 or 5 years in, honestly, and then like, hey, there's one last big move because he's still in his mid-20s. But nah, man, there's just no reason to leave.
He's very comfortable, and I think again, there's a documentary coming out about him on Paramount Plus.
I have mixed emotions about people getting documentaries.
So do I, especially a player that's doing really well for us. And again, like he's accomplished a lot in his career, but there's still a lot of things that you could probably ask him that he's like, I haven't done what I want. I haven't fully accomplished what I set out to accomplish. So it's still a player that's still young, right? There's still so much football, so much living left for him to experience. So for us to have a documentary at 25 years old, it's kind of strange, but nonetheless, I think again, he seems like a very reserved player, someone who doesn't like all that attention. And I think that when he's comfortable the way he's comfortable now and is producing and is really enjoying both football and life off the pitch, I just don't see really any sort of reason in my mind to have any concern that he would want to leave, or at the first opportunity he would go back to the Premier League when he had that experience. I think that he is really enjoying his time at Milan. He's a success, raving success that I don't think anybody expected in their the biggest imagination possible when he joined. That yes, we're getting a good player, but for him to be doing it at this level, right? So I'm just happy he's a Milan player. I hope he continues to play great football for us for years to come, and hopefully we can win some trophies for him.
Yeah, plural. Again, Pulisic thriving. I want to give a shout out to another player, Tammy Abaraham. Thought this was his best performance in a Milan shirt. The assist to Pulisic, as we mentioned just a little bit earlier, was really nice to see. Doing the opposite of Morata in terms of just, contributing offensively. Everyone during the Juventus match was like, look at the work rate. And you're sort of like, I don't care. Score goals. It's 0-0. We need 3 points. You could celebrate that work rate stuff elsewhere. I think I quote tweeted somebody saying like, okay, congratulations on work rate. I could do that. If you said like, this is a real match right now and I have this kid on and I'm going out to go and play, I'm going to give it 150%. That's not even a question. So if I can do it, it shouldn't really be getting praise. Or if you guys can do it, Angelo can do it. Like, sure. Like, again, if you're work rate FC, go watch Salamakers and other players. But again, the dummy on the Rafael Leao goal, I thought was really smooth. Again, if you guys go back and watch that goal, Fofana, awesome pass. Again, dude, a couple of assists. I think he against Cagliari as well, that left-footed assist. Fofana's really starting to come into his own. It's obviously magnified at some of his weaknesses, but again, I think that's just putting players that are not natural defensive midfielders out of position, kind of exposes them. That's what we've seen with him, Tijani to an extent. And then again, he finally gets his goal. Not the greatest of finishes, but you finish. So that's all that matters, right? So again, I thought it was a complete performance up top by Tammy, by Milan desperately needing that from him. I think he needed it with the turbulent start to his Milan career. And again, so that was great to see. Any quick notes on Tammy before we go to our man of the match here?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't want to be too prisoner of the moment, right? Because we scored 3 goals in a Champions League game and won, and there were some positives, as you mentioned, right? We're able to, sit and rest Morata and put Tammy Abraham in there, and he puts in a really good performance. And the same thing with not having to start Rafa. You put no Okafor, who I didn't really think did much, but I think that it gives you a little bit of sense of calmness when it comes to our view on the attack and how good we can be. I think that from the striker position, I feel pretty good about the guys we have. I'm not saying that they're going to blow me away on a given match day, but I think that generally speaking, throughout the course of a 90, I like what Morata can do. I know his finishing is still being is leaving a lot to be desired, but I think that when you look at the way we kind of shape up in most games, offensively, we're in them. We're in them, and we can score goals. So I don't want to again make it like a doom and gloom, right? But I think that Pulisic makes a really good point, in his post match, where I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, we got the result and that's what matters, but like there is some sense of disappointment and there's some sense of like, hey, we can have more goals, we can make things a lot easier on us.
Yeah,
and that's kind of my main takeaway. That's how I feel about most of these games, right? Where it's like 3-2, it's like he said it feels like a loss because we didn't play the type of performance that we should in a match like this on this stage. So just to get back to Tammy, though, good performance from him. He definitely needed, as you mentioned, especially after the whole debacle against Fiorentina where, the penalty he didn't convert. That was a huge talking point. And really since then, he hasn't been someone who's gotten many opportunities to kind of avenge himself. So good performance. Hopefully we can keep it pushing. And again, from the attacking standpoint, like I feel good about where we're at. It's just defensively that it's really mitigating and almost neutralizing all the good we are doing in the attack. Because as we mentioned, right, in the calculated game, you can't score 3 goals and draw. That can't happen. And that shows you how dire things are defensively, right? Where it's like you're putting 3 goals up on the board and you're not getting 3 points. That can't happen.
Wanted to shout out another Matt real quick. I love this post. It's so funny on how Fonseca chooses a center back pairing. And if you guys don't know this, it's just I don't know, like say you're in a situation you need to like flip a coin, but there's more than like 2 choices and you need to figure out, or you're like, who's gonna get the first pick in this like draft? You just do a roulette and it's up to chance. That's basically what the meme is here. Sorry if I have to explain that to some people, but again, you're right. You mentioned it all the time about, hey, like Milan literally have to score multiple goals a game because their defense is so weak. So yeah, it's great you're scoring 3 goals, but is it really great when you're conceding this much? The answer is no. To finish off this podcast, Rafael Leao, man of the match, off of the bench. We don't truly know why he was sat. Fonseca gave some sort of cryptic comments after the game, like, oh, yeah, well, we had to or whatever. We saw Leao was sort of limping after the Juventus match. It didn't seem like it was 100%. Obviously, a shortened week. Milan have quick turnarounds. There's Empoli, there's Sassuolo, and I believe Atalanta is soon after that. So for me, I just really love this player, honestly. And I love how he's just shutting everybody up. He is the difference in this. He gets man of the match yet again in the Champions League. I think Kuchka mentioned it in his post-match comments, Matt. I'm not sure if you saw it, but basically he was kind of just walking around, and then he just went from 0 to 100, and you were like, holy shit, that's terrifying. I'm paraphrasing and adding to it because that's realistically what he is. I love your point at the start of the podcast where it's sort of like, put Okafor on later. And we always talk about this as a problem we have with Pioli as well. I think it's a negative of Fonseca. Go and attack and kill off games early. Defend them later. Okay? Why are we having to use and
especially Champions League games?
Yeah. And it's funny enough because Milan have won 3 straight in the Champions League. But it's annoying because we know this process is unsustainable. It's just you can't keep doing this because you know it's going to backfire. We saw it backfire immediately against Cagliari. You love that they get results like this. And really, that's kind of what it's ultimately down to is you're happy with the result. You're not happy with the journey and process to get to that result. And Leao's performance off the bench is sort of a microcosm of that in a way where you're like, yeah, again, he has to save our ass. Yeah, there was great performances. We got 3 goals. They were coming from different players. Fofana involved, Tammy involved, Pulisic involved, other players really opening up space and creating dangers. But ultimately, it comes down to individual brilliance once again, Matt, did it not? Because the finish here was great. And yeah, I mean, listen, just kudos. Like this is, everyone was like, where's the Champions League performances? Where are these big moments? yeah, these are not the greatest of teams you're facing in the Champions League, but the moment's there. He won them the 3 points ultimately, right? Tammy scored his goal. That was the difference as well. But really, it's Leao off of the bench because they looked much better after that. I thought the goal that Slovan had scored was completely out of nothing. I thought Tomorin did a poor job of closing down space. But again, this is just, you saw how much more dynamic we were when Leao came on the pitch. So again, congratulations to him on getting man of the match. Not much comments left for me here regarding this. I just sort of want to wrap up here with a 30-minute episode or so. But Leao, the difference ultimately off the bench, Matt, your sort of final comments on him and the match here.
Fantastic player. We all know the quality is there. We all know he's an elite game changer when he's up for it and he's motivated. And in a match like this, coming off the bench, do want to credit him for that because I think it hasn't been easy this season. When you look at the turbulence that he's endured and the turbulence that the club has endured, some of it's self-inflicted, in my opinion, based on Paulo Fonseca's decision-making and selections. So in a match like this, I think, look, Rafa not starting, again, very head-scratching, no doubt. And we've heard comments from him in recent matches, right, or recent weeks where he said, like, oh, there's no issues, everything's good, all these sorts of things. And of course, in a match like this, he comes off the bench, makes the difference, and he's largely to credit for why we were able to get the result we did. But in the post-match too, same thing, where he's saying like a lot of the same things, where he's like, Paulo knows I don't like to be on the bench and all these sorts of things. And I think it's pretty evident that he is still frustrated. I'm not going to say that it's a huge thing and he's becoming a distraction. I think he's in that phase now where he's head down working, because I think ultimately he knows that by him making it into an issue, it's only going to bring more negative attention to him and the club. And as the face of this project still, it's going to reflect on him, right? So if he has some sort of out-of-pocket comment or, does something on the field, like everything's going to be looked at through a very narrow and fine lens. So he's sort of, in my opinion, masking still some frustration with the way that he's being, handled when it comes to the Champions League games and things like that. Because Pulisic came off in the game yesterday, and they were asked, like, was it precaution? He was like, yeah, it's precaution. To your point, what was the reasoning for Rafa? So miss me with the whole tactical. What did Noah Okafor bring over the course?
It's very mediocre.
It's very silly. It's very stupid. I think that ultimately Rafa's at that position now where he is going to let his performances speak for themselves and do the talking. But again, truthfully, the way this season has gone and the way I feel it's going to continue to go, this isn't an over story between them two. This is going to continue to be an issue. This is going to continue to be at least a talking point in the media. And I'm not saying that Rafael Leao is going to leave, but there are reports from a couple weeks ago where Vitiello said that his agent is like kind of surveying the market for January. I think that's kind of like a warning shot.
I think it's a leverage play, yeah.
I think it's a leverage play, but I also think it's a potential warning shot where I think Rafa's in a position where he's just maybe being advised and taking it upon himself to say, let me just put forth my good performances. If I get to June and something happens, that happens. I'm not saying I'm leaving, but I'm not saying I'm guaranteeing I want to stay. Is basically where I feel that, in my opinion, unless, of course, things change with the relationship with Fonseca, or alternatively, if another coach comes in, maybe with that other coach. But again, that's just kind of my view on it. I could be analyzing it a little bit too much, but I think the way the quotes are going back and forth between the player and the coach, it seems like there's still some sort of disconnect, in my opinion, with how things are going.
I don't necessarily disagree, because you're right. It should just like be addressed with simple transparency. Everything is so cryptic. Everything is so vague. It's not like, oh, black and white. Like, yeah, he had a knock. We had him on the bench. Every single time he's asked, is just always some sort of like tap dancing around the real answer that we're looking for. That doesn't help him. I genuinely think he's bad at these press conferences. I know he has like a good personality to some people, and all,
but it's odd though, because
like
he's getting so much in the media. You think that when you get a result like this, again, granted it wasn't the cleanest performance.
Sure.
But you'd think that you'd want to score some brownie points with the media, who's been super critical of the way things have gone,
And rightfully
with
so.
your job at risk. But it feels like every other match day. That's just my opinion. But
I think things are better. We'll see how he starts on the weekend. I think Noah Okafor should just start against Sassuolo. Like, just use the backups against Sassuolo. Like, that's the one. And again, we talk about prioritizing. Obviously, the Champions League is a huge prioritization for the club because of the financials, and obviously it's the biggest competition. But Serie A, in comparison as well, like, we need to start picking up the points. We're falling behind here. We really are. It's one thing. We talked about, the draw, because we're not going to really talk about Juventus really that much. But the point is with that is that, it's one thing to get a draw against them, but you have Empoli. You have to get 3 points. Cagliari, you have to get 3 points. You have to. It's not a question of like, okay, can we survive that? Like, Lazio situation, Lazio's a good team. Now the draw looks pretty decent away, right? Given the circumstances. But this stuff, shut up. Just get the fucking 3 points. Honestly, like, excuse my language. I'm sick of it. Like, just do it.
I'm gonna be a little greedy and say, can we at least fix the defense a little bit?
Oh, that's so greedy of you. How dare you? How dare you ask for some solidity? It's honestly mind-boggling to me how I've seen so many better defenses from so many inferior, talented teams regarding Milan. But again, that's really the podcast here. We're not going to ramble. Kept it relatively short. Again, we appreciate all of your support. Follow us at That Milan Podcast, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Again, go and follow us on Spotify, Apple. Subscribe there if you haven't already. Obviously, subscribe to this channel here. Like, comment, give us your thoughts on this match, what the Fonseca Leao relationship is like. And let me see when we're playing this weekend. Excuse me for that. But again, Matt, plug a couple things while I go and
yeah, you guys can follow me on X at Matt_Santangelo. Follow my brother and I at AC Milan Bros as well. We're above 21,000 followers now, so
insane. Pretty
awesome feat. So again, thank you to that sort of like overlap of our community that figures out about some of the other things that we're affiliated with and follows. We do appreciate it truly, and it's, again, like I said, and like Martino said, result matters. We got the result we wanted in this one, but chop, guys. We're approaching December. We need to get some more consistent results, start to compile some victories in a more consistent manner, and play defensively and more balanced football. So that is all. Thank you guys for the support.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for the support again. I'm Martino Puccio everywhere. Really appreciate everything. Happy Thanksgiving to those who celebrate over here in the States if you're a listener. And we'll see you soon. Take care.